Hi everybody, welcome to Sprague Woodturning. My name is Jim. If you haven't been here before, this is predominantly a turning channel. Where each and every week I teach people how to make things on the lathe. Now, in the recent past, I've made a lot of projects and then, I've got some leftover burl. So that's what this is right here. This is some really fabulous maple burl. And I've got a whole bunch of other pieces from different projects. So this week I thought it would be cool to combine these all into one casting. So that's what we're going to do this week. Let's head over to the bench and have a look at the pieces that we're going to use. And yeah, I think we're going to do a vase with this. That's my intention as it is right now, but that's all subject to change. Anyway, let's go over to the bench and figure out what we're going to do here. All right, so besides this, we got some other really cool looking maple burl. This is a hard maple and this is a soft maple. Some more soft maple. You might remember these little galls that I got. Still don't really know for sure what they are. So, I've only got, say, 3 of these. So I figured that it was probably, it'd be good to use them up in a casting like this. There's the ironwood knot grow over, if you remember that one. And some beautiful catalpa burl. Again, not real big, but we got enough of them here. It's a pencil line spalted maple. Another little maple burl cap. I'm going to use this right in the dead center of the casting. And a whole lot, well, not a lot, but cholla cactus. Hopefully I said that right. These were sent to me from Cliff. Thanks again, Cliff. And they're just a really neat looking thing. So we'll try and incorporate that throughout this piece. And hopefully when it's combined with some resin, it's going to look really cool. Anyway, what we got to do now is get these pieces cleaned up and ready for casting. So let's do that. So getting right into this, yes, it's important to strip the bark off of these pieces, especially if the bark is loose. Sometimes I don't do it if the bark is really adhered to the wood and it's, a real struggle to get it off. I will leave it, but in most cases I will strip it off, and we're using a brass coated brush to do that. And then you'll also see me switch out to a 40 grit flat wheel sander just to give the pieces a good tooth for the epoxy to bond to. Okay, this is going to be our centerpiece so that the very foot of this piece has a solid piece of wood so we can write on it. And as far as these are concerned, the important thing is I want to make sure the burls are put up against the outside of the bucket. That way they'll be incorporated in our piece, because if they're like this, then you may never even see them. They may get turned away. And I don't know, I'm just going to try and space these out and figure this out. I'm just going to stick these in wherever I can. So the key here is to put these pieces in randomly. And while that may sound easy to do, our brains, well, especially my brain, isn't geared that way. It's hard. It's very hard to do random things. Layout to me needs to be symmetrical in my brain. So trying to lay these in, it sometimes is a bit of a struggle for me. But I'm just basically trying to fill the as much space as I can so we're not using so much epoxy. But anyway, doing random things sometimes isn't as easy as it sounds. That's what I've found anyway. Those glue spots shouldn't be an issue because, of course, it's going to be a vase, so that should be gone. All right, let's finally mix up some resin. Since this is a very deep cast, we're going to be using deep casting epoxy from Designer Epoxy. And if you want to give Designer Epoxy a try, there is a link in the description to get 10% off your order, free shipping within continental USA and Canada, and you'll get some free color bags too. And speaking of color bags, we're going to use some black pearl in this one. And along with that, we're also going to use some crystal ice white. I really like the combination of these two. If you're going for a space-themed project, this is one of the ways you can do it because the ice looks like stars. All right, busted out the big bucket this week. This is 3 liters. Looks like this one will be going into the fridge. All right, I'll mix up, I'm going to mix up another 3 liters by the looks of it. And I'll bring it back when it's ready. Yikes. All right, here's another 3 liters. So before this goes into the fridge, I wanted to run it through the vacuum chamber, and the reason for that is I've got some soft, punky pieces of wood that I think they would definitely benefit from this, so that's why I went this way. But you know, you got to be really careful here because there's a lot of epoxy and it could start to set before you get it into the fridge. And I'll cover why I'm putting it in the fridge here in a minute. Well, after half hour worth of being in the vacuum chamber, that's the level. I'm not going to add any more because we're really pushing our luck even with the fridge as far as thermal cracking is concerned. I'll give you an update on this tomorrow and the day after. Stay tuned. Well, this is the next day, and it's 20 hours after I put this in the fridge. And it's funny, when I opened the fridge door, it was actually warm inside of the fridge. So this thing must have got really, really warm. So right now it's sitting at 35.2 Celsius. And of course that's 94.6 Fahrenheit. As you can see, the level has dropped off quite a bit as well. Actually, my intention today was to come out here and try and inject some gold into this. But you know, it's surprising how hot this is. So far, I'll stick my finger in there, but you know, it's a little soft, but not real. That's not real soft, that's for sure. Now I've got stuff embedded in there. And anyway, I don't really know. I'm kind of torn because I think that this might look good with maybe, it's like the Indy 500 every time I turn the camera on here. I don't know if I pour another color on here, if it's going to be really obtrusive. I could try and mix up the same amount to fill this up to the top, but you know, I just don't know. If it was liquid, if it was more liquidy, I certainly would inject it with something. Right now, this is 8 inches deep. That's how deep this casting is. Decisions. Yeah, unfortunately, we're not going to get a whole lot of use out of a lot of the stuff on the top here. I don't know. Let me think about it. I'll get back to you here. All right, so after giving it some thought, I just mixed up another 800 milliliters of Art Cast, mixed the same strength. So it should blend in and we shouldn't have any wetness lines. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to cover a lot of this. And the reason I'm using Art Cast is because, of course, if I use deep cast, it'll be another 72 hours. Anyway, this seems to be getting warmer, so I'm just going to pour this, put it back in the fridge for at least another day, and then we'll be able to work on it after that. And then we'll be able to make our vase, if that's what I decide to make out of this. Into the fridge it goes. Well, good morning. So let me catch you up here. After I poured the art cast, we got a thermal crack along the top here. So I had some leftover Pro Series, so I mixed it up and then put it inside here just to seal this up, just to make sure that we got a good solid surface to push on, but it's right here. I don't even know if the camera's gonna, I did a pretty decent job trying to match it up. Anyway, we're not gonna do anything with this today except for get it out of here to make sure there isn't other thermal cracks that we need to repair before we can throw this on the lathe tomorrow. So for me, it's probably 50-50 that we got cracks in this or not, but we'll see. So why did I use a fridge here? If you haven't seen this technique before, the idea behind this is that, of course, when epoxy cures, it warms up. And if it's an over pour, then it warms up so fast that it cracks. This is only supposed to be 4 inches deep. That's what deep cast is designed to be used at. So of course this is well past that. And by throwing this in the fridge, it'll slow down that cure and in theory, prevent thermal cracking. Well, she looks good. I'm a little surprised by that. It's a deep casting. I was a little worried when I opened the fridge the first time and seen that this was warm. So, but I am going to let this set up for one more day, and then we'll get this on the lathe and hopefully get a beautiful vase done. Anyway, see you tomorrow. So this is in fact the next day, and here I'm using the cut saw sander on my DeWalt grinder to grind down a little flat area for the drive center to sit on. Drive center or live center, doesn't matter. Yeah, it's pretty dusty. Pretty dusty job doing this away from any vacuum system. But anyway, once we get the 2 holes drilled here for the live center and the drive center, we'll get it mounted on the lathe and get turning here. Starting off at 450 RPM, tried to go a little higher than that, and all the lathe was vibrating. So I said, okay, gotta turn the speed down a little bit here. Once things are trued up, I'll be able to bump it up a little higher. But right now, 450 is all I can do. And of course, like it always is, strip off the excess epoxy, reveal what's beneath the surface, and figure out exactly what we're going to do from that point on. And of course, I'm using the number 3 Hercules from Hunter Tool Systems, link in the description. But there is some risk here. This is a big, heavy casting, and this is why when you see me drill holes for the live center and the drive center, that it actually will, it will hold the blank more securely in that manner. So I highly recommend doing that, especially on castings this size. Another alternative would be, of course, to grind down the bottom, what's going to be the bottom of the piece. And again, sometimes I don't know what's going to be the bottom and what's going to be the top. So this is another reason why I don't do it. But if you can grind a flat spot on what is going to be the bottom, then of course put a glue block on then, like I usually do. Then once you've got that rounded on the lathe, you can mount it in the chuck, and it's certainly a lot safer to turn at that point. So you'll also notice that I'm wearing a glove, and what that is, it's an old mechanic's glove that I've cut the fingers off. And the reason why I've cut the fingers off is if you have a it's not always the case, but if I have a glove with the fingers still on it when I'm turning on the lathe, then all of the resin and wood goes down inside the glove, and then you can't get rid of it. It's very difficult to anyway. So I cut the fingers off these gloves, and you know, they may look ratty and old, but I actually love the set of gloves. They they fit my hand well, and I would sooner wear a glove than have resin and wood embedded into my hand, especially near the top of this casting where it kind of, when the epoxy cures, it creates a little sharp edge. So, you know, when that comes off the lathe, that could really cut you. So it's important to wear a glove. As long as the glove stays on the operator side of the tool rest, there should never be any issues. If I was working on a metal lathe, then it would be a different story. I've also been asked a number of times when the shavings come off if they're hot or if they're warm. And yes, they're warm. They're not hot that they'll hurt you at all. It actually feels quite nice when the shavings land on the back of your neck, because well, I don't have a lot of hair, so the shavings will come off and land on the back of my neck. And if the workshop's nice and cold, then you know it actually feels kind of nice. It's not really that great of a feeling when it goes down the back of your shirt, but that's what you're going to deal with if you get into this type of work. So I've just turned a tenon on top of this. We're going to reverse this, and then this way we'll be able to get a glue block on here once I figure out what I'm doing here, like I usually do. And you know, this has presented some challenges before we even got to the lathe. So there's going to be more coming up. I don't want to spoil it for you, but there certainly is going to be more coming up here. But you know, this is my normal glue block method that I like to use. That way you can put multiple coats of finish on the piece and you never have to actually handle it. And this is kind of one of the sacrifices that you make when you want shiny finishes that I like to use. So that is a soft maple glue block that's been dipped in hot melt glue in an electric frying pan. And ordinarily, I don't really have too many issues with this, but you know, this has been a problem recently, and I think that maybe I might have figured out why I'm having such an issue with this, but we'll talk about that a little bit coming up here. So that is a parting tool, and I'm just using that to crispen up the edges where the top of the jaws are going to sit on the bottom of the casting, and just to make things really nice so that when it's reversed, hopefully it runs true-ish. Now when I take this off the lathe, I certainly could take a chisel and try and chisel off that little nub that's on the bottom. But I find it's easier just to go over with the belt sander, grind it off, and then bring it back and throw it on the lathe. And I don't know, it's just easier. For me anyway. So we're just going to take a few little finishing passes here before we talk about this piece, just to try and get rid of any tear out that might be in the chip out, I should say, in the resin. And I'll figure out exactly what we're going to do with this thing. All right, so it is decision time as to what we are going to do with this. Now, there's something that really bothers me about this piece, and it's this. It doesn't really bother me, but I think what I want to do is somehow mask this. So I think what I'm going to do is taper this off to a small foot, come up and sweep in, and then flare the top out, and then of course we'll hollow it from there. That should do. This should hopefully disguise this joint. And again, I'm kind of on the fence as to how this looks or not. And I think once we get deeper into this, this is going to come into play and it's going to close that off. And I don't think that it's going to be so obtrusive to the eye, if it's bothering you, like it's bothering me. But the resin is spectacular. And I must say, you know, witness line, I don't see no witness line. It's crazy. It's gone. So I'm happy days about that. So anyway, I don't know. It's as you can see, like this, there's still some glue embedded right here, and need to relieve that. So by cutting this in, hopefully we'll be able to disguise this better than what it is now. And we'll see. Could throw maybe some beads in here. I don't know. We'll have to figure that out as we go. So if you've been around for a while, you know that I hate witness lines when it comes to working with epoxy. And I'm lucky enough that I have a video record that I can go back and look at and say, okay, I mixed it with, you know, this amount of pigment with this amount of epoxy. And then of course, if I need to half that or quarter it, then I can do that. So if you're doing this at home, then I would suggest writing down what you did on your first initial pour. That way, if you have to go back and correct it, that you can then mix up the same amount with the same intensity as far as color is concerned. I really highly recommend doing that. Like I said though, having a video record is really awesome. You can also go back and see where you made mistakes too, so you don't do them again. So as you watch me whittle this away to the smaller foot, I do find that if you look at a lot of my work, the foot area seems to be getting smaller and smaller. I find that will give you a more delicate looking form. So this is one of the reasons why I think I like to have the foot smaller than say larger. A larger clunky foot looks heavy to me, and a lot of times trying to figure out the balance between the top, middle section, and the bottom of pieces like this, and you know, trying to bring a new style each and every week can be quite challenging. So with that said, if you have something in your mind that you would like to see me create here, then by all means in the comments down below, tell me what you'd like to see. Vases, hollow forms, straight bowls, types of pigment, types of wood. I'll certainly take all of your suggestions. I can't guarantee that I will make it, but it's really one of the reasons that I like doing these voiceovers is that, you know, we can talk about these things and people can make suggestions, and then maybe you'll see it in a video later on. So please comment down below. I really appreciate it. So here is your weekly house update, and if you're not aware of it, it's your first time here, my wife and I are moving to the east coast of Canada, the province of New Brunswick, to our home province, and our house is for sale currently here in Ontario right now. So we did have a showing, I guess it was on Wednesday, and it was one of these video showings, which is, it's amazing how technology has changed things, where essentially the real estate agent walked through the house and showed the house to the potential clients who were in a different part of Canada. For whatever reason, they couldn't get here to look at the house. But this is a house hunter, military house hunter, so they are looking for a home right now. So not really sure where that sits. I think she really loved the house and him not so much, so I don't really know how this is going to go. But regardless, we have another showing on the day that this is being shown on Friday. So things are picking up. So, you know, it gives my wife and I some optimism that eventually this place is going to sell, and then we can pack up and move to our home province of New Brunswick. But we just got to wait for the right person to come along. And when that happens, we'll be on our way. So if you look at the piece on the lathe now, I'm cutting in deeper and deeper and deeper, trying to basically mask that straight edge in there. What I probably should have done with that piece is I should have glued it near the top. And then the problem is I had too many pieces with straight lines in them. And I find if you make a casting that has a lot of straight lines in it, say everything has a straight line in it, then it works. But if you've got all of these natural edge pieces, it doesn't so much. So I love to put in those real-time clips when I can, and that was, I guess you would call that a shearing cut. The way the tool is presented to the wood, it's almost straight onto it, and of course the Hercules is on its side, so that creates kind of a shearing cut. Again, all of the Hunter line here, Hunter Tools line, uses cupped cutters, and compared to other manufacturers, I found that the cutters seem to stay sharper longer. I don't know if that has to do with the fact that they're cupped. Any of the machinists that are watching this might have some insight into that, but I think that they actually stay sharper a lot longer. That is the Phoenix, and I'm just going to try and cut in a little foot area, and the Hercules, the size of the Hercules cutter is just a little bit too large for that, so that's why I'm using the Phoenix. But it's great for detail work like this little foot area. All right, so I pulled this off of the lathe just to get a look at it here at the bench, and well, it's really giving me spittoon vibes. So that's certainly not what I'm going for. I'll make that very clear right now. So I think what I'm going to do is just make this top a lot smaller than it is. Maybe close it in, and then we'll do maybe a bead or a cove at the very top of it. And whatever this is, we'll have to live with it. I mean, this is a piece of spectacular burl, so you know. And so is this. I'm going to clean that off a little bit more. But yeah, it just, you know, those two mystery burls or galls. It's just giving me spittoon vibes, and that's really not what I'm going for. So yeah, I think whittling this top down is certainly the key to making this not look like a spittoon. But, well, I mean, some people might be fine with that shape, but for me, I would prefer it not look spittoon shaped, because that's certainly not what I'm going for. So as you've seen, this was in the vacuum chamber earlier, and one of the problems that I had with this piece, not so much on the outside of it, because the outside pieces seem to absorb a fair bit of the epoxy, but on the inside of this, there was a number of areas that just didn't really, the epoxy didn't get a chance to do its work like it should have, and there's a couple of reasons for that. It's set up too fast. So ordinarily, you know, this epoxy on normal pours, even at, you know, 18 hours, can still be quite liquidy. So that of course allows a lot more time for the epoxy to wick into the pieces of wood that you're working on. And the other big one is it didn't go into the pressure pot. So this went into the fridge, and if this had gone into the pressure pot, then of course that would have pushed that epoxy into areas as well. The vacuum chamber, really it should have been in the vacuum chamber for a couple of hours, and if that was the case, then it certainly would have been a lot better than what it was, but it would have been very risky to do so, because it would have started, the epoxy would have started to set by that stage, I think. So I'm relatively happy with the way that looks. Yeah, there's the odd little bit of tear out and a little bit of a bubble that needs to be turned away, but you know, it's cut very cleanly. Basically, I'm using the Hercules like you would with a spindle gouge. You can go from the top sharp point of the cove down into the base, but it's a little risky. And if you do, you got to make sure that the tool is really kind of locked down onto the tool rest. So the safest way to do that is to go right at the very low point of the groove and work your way out, or the cove, I should say. So of course this piece has this long flowing curve on it, and I do find that sometimes I struggle in this area trying to turn this and not have any little dips and valleys and high points. So it's kind of, when it comes to turning, I find that sometimes I do struggle a little bit in this regard. So, you know, just kind of shear scraping with the Hercules on its side, you can take down those high points and then kind of smooth it all out, and then you're golden after that. So there's still some ghosting on the very top of this where those pieces are sitting, those straight line pieces. So all I'm doing is whittling down the top to expose that wood all the way around, and then we'll be able to drill this piece out. You're going to see here in a minute when I shut the lathe off some thermal cracks, but those thermal cracks are in the arc cast from the second pour, and I don't really, yeah, right there, like that is actually really soft, and I knew that this was going to be a problem as soon as I went to stick my finger in it. And yeah, those are little thermal cracks, but those are actually in the arc cast, and it's not going to affect anything that we're doing here. So I've got the steady rest in place, as you can see. I didn't use any tape this week due to the fact that it's running in that little cove area. Didn't really see the need for it. And started drilling at 1 1/16", and then stepped it up to a 2-inch. Then eventually I'm going to go to a 3-inch. And the 3-inch is, I don't know, sometimes it's a little scary for me. It really, once it gets into the wood, it's fine. But getting into the wood can be a bit of an issue, especially with the tailstock that is on this lathe that I absolutely despise. I really wish that I could get an aftermarket tailstock that would work on this lathe that, you know, has better travel on it and less movement in it. But anyway, if you know of a source that will fit these lathes, this is 20-inch general variable speed, please let me know, because I would definitely be interested in changing this tailstock out. So yeah, you can see that 3-inch bit just kind of wobbling around. I was like, you know, if I didn't have that steady rest in place, I don't know what would have happened. So, but once you get into the wood, you know, a lot of times you're okay. And the other issue I had was I had a tailstock extension in, and that was causing a lot of different vibration as well. So I removed the tailstock extension, and it did work smoother after that, but still not enough travel and way too much movement in the tailstock for my liking. Well, all right, we're all set up and ready for hollowing. If you haven't seen this before, this is the one-way captive system from oneway.ca, and I also have a modified laser set up in here. This is the retrofit tool from Hunter Tool Systems. Mike Hunter told me that he does have these clamping blocks back in stock, so if you're looking for the clamping block, check them out, or check him out. He should have them available on his website. Right now it's set at that, I don't know, say 5/8 of an inch. And I'll give you a look inside. So that's what we're looking at right now. There is some thermal cracking in here, but I'm thinking we're going to be able to get rid of all of that, hopefully. The wood isn't in the best of condition, so we are definitely going to have to do an epoxy coat on this piece to harden up all those pieces inside. And yeah, that's it. Fire up the camera and get this beauty done. I should mention that I am using Cindy Drozda's light as well here. Since I'm doing an open form this week, we'll be able to get some really good looks at the retrofit tool in action. along with, of course, the captive system here from One Way. And yeah, I bought a DeWalt shop vac, so that is, well, I guess it's not really a shop vac, DeWalt vacuum cleaner. And that way I'm not blowing shavings all through the workshop when I'm cleaning out the inside of this. So that last clip was actually only at 6% volume. So it can be quite loud. I am wearing hearing protection. You'll see when the camera pans out. And I think that part of the reason for that is because of the shape of this. It was really kind of resonating. It was actually quite loud. So, and along with that, I'm also wearing the power cap from JSP, and I got it from Peak Safety in the US. So far, I'm liking the power cap. Not really liking the location of the filters. I find that they plug up quite quickly, but it's actually a fairly easy remedy to fix. I just take it off and blow across the surface of them into my dust collector, and that usually gets rid of the majority of the dust that's sitting on the outside of it. It's got a double filter in it. And but yeah, because of the shape of this piece, it was just really resonating, a lot of sound. So that's why I decided to wear the hearing protection. I don't always wear it. Sometimes I just don't see the need for it. But in this case, I certainly did. So I noticed the vacuum cleaner stopped working. And that would be the reason why. I was actually quite surprised that there was that many shavings in that. So that gives you an idea that if that wasn't inside the vacuum cleaner, it would be on the floor somewhere. So here I'm working down at the bottom, and I've got the retrofit tool almost straight and coming across the very bottom. So, you know, typically the way that hollowing is done, you work at the top and you work your way in all the way to the base. Sometimes I don't do it that way. Sometimes I'll go in and just try and open up a larger cavity, especially if you're working on a hollow form. You know, this is a vase, so it's not the same thing. So, you know, you can easily, a lot of the shavings are coming out of the piece and not being trapped in it. But usually you would start at the top and work your way in all the way to the base. And that's basically what I did this week. Trying to get that little nub done right at the very bottom of these pieces is sometimes the hardest part in this whole process. Trying to make things nice and even across the very bottom can be a challenge. But you just got to remember that when you're in the center, you can really see how slow I'm going. And that's because the surface of the wood isn't moving as fast. When you're on the sides, of course, the surface speed of the piece you're working on is much higher, and you can go a little quicker. But when you're working at the very base, you got to really take your time and go slow, and eventually you'll be able to get rid of the little nub or recess that's in the bottom. If you missed last week's video, it was the catalpa burl hollow form. An absolutely spectacular piece of wood. You never would have known it looking at it. And like I said in that video, ordinarily that would have been trash to me in the past. But of course, that catalpa burl combined with the sky blue was an absolutely beautiful form. And so anyway, I'll link that at the end of this video if you missed it. And thanks to those who did watch it. So I've switched to the teardrop cutter, and I have a love-hate relationship with this. And this teardrop cutter is purposely built for this system. Sometimes some castings that I work on, they work great. And a lot of times I'll work on a casting and it doesn't. So I was able to take some nice finishing passes here. I actually wish that there was an option for the retrofit tool that had a larger cutter on it. I think if there was a larger cutter on it, and you know, I'm just kind of speculating here. I've never done any testing per se, but if there was a larger cutter, I wonder if the dig ends might be less. You can see some chip out right in the very bottom there. And you know, that came from the retrofit tool. And that typically happens when you don't maintain contact with the wood. So as soon as the cutter loses contact with the wood, or you have to reset, then as you enter the piece, sometimes you'll get that initial grab and the chip out will happen. So, but I'd certainly be interested in trying a larger cutter to see if there's any benefits to it. Now, I was able to do a little bit of hand tool work on the inside of this, and again, this is the Hercules, exposed a really large void, as you can see there. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to reach in very far because the length of the Hercules and the tool rest is an issue the way it's presented to the wood. You may also notice that I'm also turning in reverse, and that's because I'm left-handed, so it's easier for me to do it that way. All right, I'll give you a look inside here. Just got a little bit more trimming to do. Unfortunately, this is really bad, so we're going to use some UV resin to fix this before we do any epoxy coat. I will say that it's very difficult to cut this softer kind of half-rotten burl cleanly. So that's why you see the tear out that you do. So after the epoxy coat goes on, I'll trim this again and probably sand it tomorrow. But anyway, that gives you an idea what it looks like inside. Overall, it's not too bad. I wish it was a little smoother, but I'm getting dig-ins and then I'm trying to correct that. And anyway, if you work in this industry, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. All right, UV resin coming up next. Okay, if you haven't seen this before, this is UV resin from Designer Epoxy, and it is cured with a black light that you can also get from them. And all I've done is taken a little bit of the pigment and mixed it in with it, and we're going to fill in this hole and then hit it with the UV light. Throw this light on here for 3 minutes, and we'll give this another trimming. If you're not using a UV resin, I would highly recommend it just for this. Even with the epoxy coat, it would not have filled in that area. So if you've got any major voids that need to be filled in, it's best to do that with another epoxy prior to doing an epoxy coat. And of course, UV resin is absolutely fantastic because literally 3 minutes later, you can be back on the lathe and carry on your project. So a lot less downtime equals better production. And that's a win-win. All right, after some debate, I'm not even going to bother sanding the outside of this. I'm just going to use 3 ounces here of the Pro Series. I just don't really, there's a lot of really punky grain here, and I don't know, I don't really see the point in sanding, to be quite honest with you. So we're going to harden it up with this, and then we'll do that after the trimming tomorrow. So if I would have sanded this piece before doing this, there would have been all kinds of divots left in this softer, punky wood. So that's the reason why I'm doing this. This I found to be one of the most effective ways to harden up bad areas within the casting, and of course fill in any little spots that there may be. There was no thermal cracking that needed to be filled. That was all turned away. So, on a casting this deep, it's actually pretty amazing that we didn't get more thermal cracking. There you have it, with no sanding. That's a first. Love that burl there. Patterns in the resin are absolutely spectacular. Choya on the bottom. Just cactus skeletons if you're not familiar. Yeah, it's still pretty rough on the inside. But hopefully this will harden up all those soft areas, and we'll get them cleaned up tomorrow. That's very cool right there. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. I'm just going to throw this back on the lathe, and I'm going to keep feeding it the resin until it won't take anymore. So if you're curious, usually I just pull these pieces right off the lathe and put them in a clean room. I don't let these rotate on the lathe for hours to cure. I don't see the need for it because I'm going to be sanding it away the next day anyway. All right, it is the next day. This was one of the worst spots as far as rotten and soft grain is concerned, and I can't even dig my fingernail into it now, so I think that we're good to go. Anyway, I'll put this on the lathe, set up the steady rest, and we'll get to trimming this and sanding it. So this is a new problem that I've never encountered before. I'll just be quiet and let you see it for yourselves. So I was trying to clean this up so the wheels would run true, and it's a good thing I had the steady rest in place because this has come detached from the waste block. Anyway, I need to think about this, I'll get back to you. Alright, so here's what I think is happening. I've had a few of these fail now, and if you look at this, I mean, here's where the jaws are sitting, and you know, it's really quite oblonged in some areas. So I think what's happening is this is clamping down on this, but it's clamping down so hard that it's actually popping it free from the vase and other things that I've worked on recently. So all I'm going to use is a heat gun, and I'm going to try and warm this hot melt glue up. I do have an index mark right here that lines up, and hopefully we'll be able to line that up, and hopefully we'll have something that's going to run relatively true. But I guess we'll find it. Only time will tell. We'll find out here in 10 minutes. Thought I would do this too. So I'm not sure if you're picking up the frustration in my voice, but yes, I'm there. It's definitely a thing. So anyway, I put that extra glue between the jaws, so when they clamp down on this piece, there's a space, so it wasn't really an issue. I don't know why that camera keeps going in and out of focus. I'm gonna have to try a different camera maybe. Anyway, the goal now is to flatten the top of this. That way I can put something on the top to pinch between centers essentially. And that's what that is. That's a piece of birch. And so again, I've got all kinds of these little templates and things underneath my lathe that for situations such as this. So now that we've got this supported, I've moved the steady rest back against the headstock and going to clean up this area so far. And you know, at this point, I don't know if this thing's going to come off the lathe, because at some point I'm going to have to sand this, and I just don't know how well that glue joint is holding. But it seems to do the trick from here on, so happy days. Now, what is the solution to this? I do have larger jaws that I can put in my stronghold chuck. I could maybe not be so heavy-handed when I'm tightening these pieces down. I do have a habit of over-tightening things. That probably goes back to my heavy equipment mechanic army days. But the problem with, say, sacrificing, say, a ½ inch off the bottom of this vase and using that in the jaws is the fact that it's very hard to get a bite on these pieces that have resin embedded in them. So then you're always worried about it slipping out of the chuck. I do not believe that One Way has dovetailed jaws for the stronghold chuck. I need to check on that though. And if that's the case, maybe that is a solution as well. That's still not saying for sure that it won't get ripped out of the jaw set, but it certainly, dovetail jaws technically should hold better. You could also put in the larger jaw set and then, of course, sacrifice the bottom of the vase. That way you have a larger surface area, and then cut in from there and make a smaller foot. But then you're taking size off of the piece that you're making. So I don't know. It's one of these things that I've got to figure this out so that it works better. I'm still relatively young when it comes to making hollow forms and deep vases, because that really wasn't my business in the past. As I said in the past, I was predominantly a bowl maker. And so trying to bridge into the artistic side of wood turning like this is going to take a little bit of figuring out, if you will. Anyway, I think I'm well on my way. And we're just going to have to try different things in the future to get it sorted out. Well, we didn't get the penetration from the epoxy that I was hoping for, so we're going to use some Starbond thin, harden up the grain here. I must say that I was a little surprised by this. Usually the epoxy does a really good job going in and hardening up that grain, but I don't know, for whatever reason, I have found in the past that sometimes some types of wood will accept it better than others. That was all side grain, and that might be one reason why it didn't work like it normally does. If it's end grain, then of course it'll draw that in a lot easier than being side grain. I still had to do another application of it because I just couldn't get it firm enough to move on to sanding. But eventually, down inside, I just dumped some in there because I was just getting lots of tear out in that burl. So we're just going to take a few finishing passes here, and then we'll be able to move on to sanding. I didn't show very much of this because this video was way too long as it is. I usually try to keep my videos at about the 40-minute mark, but there were so many things go wrong this week that I thought it was important to show everybody my workarounds. I know that a lot of people really appreciate it, especially the new wood turners. So finally, I've got a good enough surface that we're going to move on to sanding. So I typically like to start at 60 grit and use, as you can see, I'm using sheet goods here. And again, you can get these all at sandpaper.ca. And once I've got a nice flat surface for the sanding pad that's in the drill to run on, then I'll switch out to the drill, because power sanding is the way to go. It will give you a really good surface. But if you try to use it beforehand, I find a lot of times it's really hard to get things nice and flat before the finish can go on. So I took the steady rest off and I pulled and pushed on the form to make sure that it wasn't going to come flying off, and it didn't. So I was quite happy to see that, because this was getting to be a very long day, and I was glad to see it come to an end. That's the Triple E buffing compound from the Beal buffing system, and I use this just to remove any fine scratches that may be in the resin. Not so much for the wood. This is pretty much all resin driven, to be quite honest with you. And I just reached in as far as I could with the buffing pad, and then once that was done, used the denatured alcohol to clean the surface. Okay, after 1.5 hours of sanding, this is the first coat of Waterlux gloss. It has been a minute getting here, let me tell you. Well, there you have it. We still ended up indenting up here. Just didn't matter what I did. There was no stopping that from happening right there. Oh, that resin's just awesome. And the burl, well, it ain't bad either. Whew, I'm exhausted. All right, see you tomorrow for the second coat. Well, good morning. So I thought I would show you some stuff here before we start. Some of these pieces of wood are very dry. So, you know, this is going to take 3, maybe 4 coats. Here's what the inside looks like. Yeah, if you look at all the wood, it's pretty much dry, which, you know, means I'm not sure we're going to have a finished product here at the end of this video or not. But anyway, I'm going to buff this with the AAA buffing compound, clean it with the denatured alcohol, and we'll get our next coat of finish on. I'll make sure I give it a good little tug to make sure it isn't going to go anywhere. So same process as the first time. Now, if this piece had been sanded and then the epoxy applied and then just sanded afterwards, I definitely wouldn't need probably any more than 3 coats. But because we turned away a lot of that, I didn't really have that option. So that's why it's going to take more coats than usual. All right, so this is the second coat of Waterlux gloss. This is also another common question that I get. You know, after I put the Waterlux on, do I keep the piece I'm working on rotating on the lathe? And the answer to that is no. It goes right into the clean room where the heat is. That way the finish will cure up properly. There you go. There's a shot on the inside. I know you guys really aren't going to be able to see a whole lot. The one thing that I do like about these little galls that are in there, these things, is they have a really cool texture to them. I don't know if the camera's going to pick that up or not. The pattern in the resin is just amazing. I love that crystal ice white. The burl, well, ain't bad either now, is it? All right, so it is 9 o'clock in the morning. I will 2-coat this hopefully at about 9 o'clock tonight, and hopefully it's going to be ready tomorrow. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about this beautiful vase. Let me know about this edge detail. You like that? Anyway, we'll see you when we're doing the foot. Finally ready to do the foot here. Actually went on the first time I put it on, it was true, so that doesn't happen too often. So we're just going to whittle away this waste block with the bowl gouge from David Ellsworth. And then on the bottom of this piece, I only sand it to 320 as the majority of it is wood. All right, I'd like to personally thank you all for watching the video, especially the ones that have watched it all the way through. I really do appreciate it. Let's have a last little chat about this week's beautiful vase. Please let me know in the comments what you think. Well, it took some time getting here, but we're finally here. Going to be interesting to see what you guys think about this piece. Now, this is only 2 coats. I tried to, I wanted to do the 3rd coat yesterday, but it just wasn't ready, and I figured that if I did that, we'd be in trouble and leave marks in it. So what I've done, of course, I cut it off the waste block, but with a vacuum chuck, it's quite easy to do the inside first and then let it cure, then do the outside, and then you're good to go. And speaking of the base, here it is right here. And as per normal, run out of time because it's Thursday. Size on this, I'll put the metric conversion up on the screen. This is 8 inches wide at its widest point and 8.5 inches tall, and it's around 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch in thickness throughout the piece. And I really like it, and hopefully you guys do as well. And I should mention that this piece is for sale. If you're interested, send me an email to spraguewoodturning@gmail.com, and I will disclose the price then in case this is a gift. But looks quite nice. But it does need 1 or 2 more coats for it to be kind of the way that I want it to look anyway. Don't forget to put designer epoxy in the comments down below to be entered into the next 3-gallon giveaway at 130,000 subscribers when we get there. And if you want to, you can embed that in your comment. There's no need to put an extra comment. Along with that, of course, that's only open for Canada and continental USA. Sorry, the rest of the world, we can't accommodate you at this time. I did talk to Mike Hunter about the clamp blocks for the retrofit tool. He has them, but they're not up on his website. He figures about midweek next week is when they'll be available. So if you're looking for one of those clamp blocks, check back with Hunter Tools, say Wednesday or Thursday, and hopefully they'll be available for purchase on the website. As far as next week is concerned, that's all up in the air. I have 2 bad knees, and I deal with what's called Baker cysts, and they're in the kind of the back of my knees, and a lot of times I've got swelling in my knees. And anyway, I've injured my right knee, and I don't know how long it's going to take for that to go away. I am going to give it the weekend, put my leg up, ice it, and hopefully that will cure it good enough that I'll be able to get back on the lathe next week. But right now it's up in the air. I haven't missed an upload in 3 years, and anyway, I've got a good record going here, and I don't want to break it, but I've got to look after my health as well. But with that said, that will give me an opportunity to make some of these ASR videos that I've been talking about, and they'll be previous videos, and I'm just going to condense them down with just lathe sounds and tool sounds, and that'll make the people happy that have been telling me to shut up for the longest time. So let's look at it that way. They're finally going to get their way. Don't worry, my regular content with the voiceovers is going nowhere. I like doing these voiceovers, and I will continue to do those once I'm back on the lathe, and that might even be Monday. We'll have to see how the weekend goes. I might use the community tab to keep you posted as to what's going on, but as I say in the military, it doesn't matter how old you are, it's the mileage, and I've got a lot of mileage on this whole body, so I'm hoping that this is going to go away and it's not going to be an issue, but we'll have to see. But I do need both of my knees replaced at some point. All right, on that note, take care, stay safe, don't forget the bell. Please share my videos with your friends. That is the largest way for me to build my presence here on YouTube. I really appreciate it. Have a great weekend, and hopefully we'll see you next week with some new content. Take care.